Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we are talking about Gran Turismo. The new Sony ad is out. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes. Also, a Neill Blomkamp movie. I'm going to be honest, I was skeptical going in. It's better than I thought it would be. Stick around for the review. We're also going to talk about some upcoming trailers, things that are coming out this year that you want to know about. Except for one's coming out in January. We're going to talk about How to Blow Up a Pipeline, a 2022 indie film that's now available on Hulu. We saw this one a while back for a trailer on the show. Really interesting film. Stick around for the review. And before we get to all that, we need to talk about the news. Our first story this week, Dune Part 2 has been delayed. God, we talked about this last week. We hoped it wouldn't happen. It has. Andy, what the hell is Warner Brother doing?
My life is over now that Dune Part 2. This was the only thing. This was the only thing keeping me together.
I'm gonna toast your bathtub
Dune,
right after this podcast.
Dune, My Arrakis Part 2 delays to 2024. Will come out on the Ides of March 15th. 5-month delay. Very, very disappointing. This was supposed to come out in first weekend in November. Just a mere 2 months away, and we knew it was in danger if the strike went on too long and they couldn't launch the marketing campaign that it might get pushed, and that is exactly what has happened. Some other smaller pictures have been pushed. The Lord of the Rings animated thing that was supposed to come out in the spring has been pushed to December. Godzilla got pushed by a month, so some small things. Probably the biggest casualty is the Marvels will now get the IMAX screens that were going to go to Dune. So that's a big bonus for them. But we're going to see if more dominoes fall because Dune and the Marvels were only 3 weeks apart in release time. So unless the strikes get resolved in the next couple of weeks, I can see the Marvels maybe getting pushed as well as the other Christmas releases, things like Wonka or Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and The Color Purple.
I do want to talk about the strikes in a second, but before we get to that, I think Warner Brothers has the luxury of doing this because of the outrageous success of Barbie, which we're actually going to talk about here in a couple stories. We'll hit the box office before we get to Gran Turismo. Barbie has made so much money. Just this week, it passed the biggest film Warner Brothers has ever put out. Biggest film ever for that studio. Just passed Harry Potter 8, right? The last Harry Potter movie. So they feel like, you know what, we could probably hold off on Dune. And they got Wonka coming, which is a off-script, predicted to be an off-script success. We'll see. We'll see when it comes out December 15th. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will probably do fine. I think the rest of this year looks good for them. But more importantly, the strikes are the reason that Dune is getting pushed. And really because Warner Brothers, like the other studios, just doesn't want to pay their writers and actors. They just don't. And they're like, well, you know what? We'll take a 90-day haircut. Yeah, we put out Barbie. We're doing okay. We can afford to wait. It sucks. It sucks that that's the reason that's happening. There's really no other reason for it. It's just don't want to. They don't want to dance. They don't want to wrestle. And I think that's super lame. And I really want to see Dune this year, but I guess not.
The other big effect that this is going to have is on the award season, the Oscars. Dune was probably going to be a huge contender for Best Picture, bunch of technical awards, probably best score, and now everyone's saying that it's basically all going to go to Oppenheimer now because there's not going to be any other big competition. That would have been kind of the only thing, and now they're talking about Best Picture, maybe finally Best Director for Chris Nolan, Ludwig Göransson maybe getting best score. So the awards are also going to be affected because of just less competition.
Yeah, I saw that tweet. Somebody was like Ludwig Göransson on his knees thanking God that Dune just got pushed to next year. Yeah, I think it's lame. Nobody likes this, right? Nobody at the party likes this. The fans don't like this. Warner Brothers doesn't like it. The writers don't like it. Actors don't like it. Nobody likes this. I guess Warner Brothers kind of likes it because they're doing it. But yeah, they've got a new poster out with a new date on it. Super lame, man. Super lame, but it is what it is. Speaking of unions, though, story out of Disney this week. Walt Disney Pictures VFX workers moved to unionize. This is a big deal, and it doesn't seem like a big deal because just last week on the show, we covered Marvel VFX moving to unionize. This is a different subsidiary of Disney. This is not the people who make Marvel VFX. These are the people making Tangled and Frozen 3, and probably a few animators tangled up in Pixar. This is a completely different division, which means Disney's getting hammered on two fronts. 2 L's for Disney this week.
Just keep stacking
just taking another one. I know,
stacking
boy.
for the year.
God, I can't believe this. Super majority, over 80% of the 18 in-house VFX crew members at Walt Disney signed authorization cards signaling their desire to unionize. The VFX crews at Marvel Studios, meanwhile, that we talked about last week, they are collecting ballots, and they're going to have the vote count on September 12th to see whether or not they are formally unionizing. Andy, hot takes on this. I do have a bit on Disney history with unionizing and how it's played out in the past, but I want to hear what you think first.
I mean, this is great news. And one thing I heard recently was that it may have been from you that this is a perfect time for the VFX unions to strike because there's no work. All the work has been put on pause. And so it's the perfect time because they can't hit you with fire you from a project that doesn't exist. If you're not working, you might as well mobilize your labor in other ways. So I think it's a good time, and we're seeing the strikes be effective and kind of motivate these other sector of the film industry.
Yeah, I think, the writers have been on strike for 120 days. Actors have been on strike for, I think, over 60. I've been hearing that some studios are trying to keep VFX studios on staff and basically keep producing films as much as possible, right? Developing backgrounds and mats and maybe developing effects that they could put in. Like if Disney's already making a superhero movie, technically VFX people could be making shots. Like they could be developing sequences that are going to be all VFX, right? So there is no better time to jump on this. Studios are already feeling pressure. I think it's a fantastic time to come to the table and say, hey, wait a second, we also want a piece of the pie. Like that's great for them. Disney, real quick, regarding their history with unions, the only one they ever really had that was compelling was the Animators Union in 1941 that infamously went on strike. Walt Disney was alive then, and he hated it, dude. He hated it so bad. He went on a brutal firing tear and fired so many animators that ended up trickling out to other studios. It genuinely changed the landscape of how animation worked in the United States for 2 decades. So much animating power got moved around because Walt Disney was like, I am not playing games with a union. This is ridiculous. They had signs. I dropped a tweet about it earlier this week. It wrapped up real fast. He, agreed to pay them and then later accused a bunch of them of being communists when McCarthyism came around. A lot of problems out of Walt Disney, but Walt Disney Studios is infamously anti-union. So I'm very curious to see how this goes over. Bob Iger's not playing with the writers and the actors. I think this is a great move by the VFX workers anyway. There's no better time to get out and get theirs. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a big win for the industry. And again, we saw the Marvel VFX people unionize just a few weeks ago. So, hopefully it's a trend. And I was reading in the article that a union like this has happened since the 70s when Star Wars came out and those VFX people first started unionizing. It pretty much hasn't happened in almost 50 years.
Yeah, this is a big deal, and I think it's a good thing. And animation needs a hand, VFX needs a hand. A lot of these industries have been getting hammered with overwork and working nights and weekends and not getting paid to get stuff done. And it's time. Speaking of time, we're running out of it for our news segment, so I got to move on. At the box office this week, Gran Turismo picks up $17.4 million at the box office. Well over expectations, but still is right next to Barbie turning out $15 million. Wild weekend at the box office. Andy, what do you think?
So there's a little bit of contention here between Barbie and Gran Turismo because the 17 million is counting the sneak peeks from the last 2 weeks. Otherwise, it was 13 million, and they're saying, oh, well, we were at 17.4 million over this weekend, but they're like, Barbie, that's not really.
Sneaky.
Barbie did have another 15 million for the weekend, over 500 million domestically for Barbie, but still a pretty strong weekend for the movies as we wrap up the summer session. Summer is officially over at the movie season. Gran Turismo was kind of the last big picture before going into the fall slate. In September, we see Blue Beetle comes in at third, doing okay, around 50 million or so. I think that one might kind of have some legs. It's had a lot of positive just word of mouth, and it had only a 50% drop, which a lot of times the 60 to 70% drop is normal. So it's doing okay. We might see it chug along.
This is why you got to tune into Off Script every week, because on Off Script we read between the lines. I had no idea that Gran Turismo's numbers were inflated by pre-screenings. Solid catch, Andy. I was about to get on here and praise them for clearing their $10 million estimate. All they turned out was 13. They barely made it. Like, that's a good weekend.
Yeah.
And they had National Cinema Day on Sunday, which is $4 tickets, which I'm sure didn't move the needle too much since they're cheaper tickets. But that does mean a lot of eyes got on Gran Turismo, and they still turned a positive weekend. And overall, like, pretty good. I think is that good for a Neill Blomkamp movie? I don't even know. I'm not sure
know.
how his previous films.
Neill Blomkamp is this kind of incredible story where he comes out of the gate with District 9, this incredible sci-fi film
produced
from
by
2009
Peter Jackson out of New Zealand. Yeah, huge. Like,
yeah. I mean, it was like M. Night Shyamalan kind of story where it's this huge first film. And he's done like 4 or 5 movies since then, and they've all just kind of done mediocre. He did Elysium, Chappie, other sci-fi stuff.
Movie forever. Yeah, he was involved in an Alien reboot forever. Like, none of that stuff panned out.
And it's just never materialized, and we've never seen him kind of get back to that glory of the first movie. I saw a tweet that was like, this movie from the director of District 9. The next movie from the director of District 9. The third movie from the director of District 9. Like, he's got that one hit, and he just kind of hasn't had another one since.
Yeah, and it's tough to watch. But I can say confidently, Gran Turismo turned out better than I thought it would, which I think is a great segue into it. I think Andy's taking the summary on this one. So I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, please take it away.
Gran Turismo, based on a true story. So they weirdly changed the title of this. It was just Gran Turismo.
They did change the title. I'm glad you got that. Yeah, it was weird.
They added : based on a true story, maybe for search purposes or so it doesn't. I don't know. For some reason. Anyways, this is based on both a video game and a true story of Jan Mardenborough from the UK, who was the winner of Nissan and Sony's competition they held to find the best racing sim drivers and put them in real race cars and see if they could actually race real cars. And turns out they could, and they won. And he went on to win races, to race at the famous Le Mans 24-hour race, and now continues to race and is also like a stunt driver, stunt performer, and he makes an appearance in this movie. So it's that story told by Orlando Bloom, or it stars Orlando Bloom and David Harbour as both the marketer and the professional driver, chief of engineering, who kind of come up with this scheme to bring gamers to the racing track. And it stars Archie Madekwe, who we actually saw from Midsummer. He's briefly in that movie. He doesn't last very long. But his story is he comes from a very working class background. His dad says, you got to get a real job, kid. You can't race cars all your life. We're not these people. You got to be wealthy to do that. He discovers the competition, gets into the Gran Turismo Academy, has to prove himself there, and then goes on to race for real. This is all the trailer gives away the whole movie. But the journey is still interesting. I think it's very well made, and it's a lot better than it deserves to be. I saw it with a very full crowd who was cheering, clapping, crying through it. So it's definitely a crowd pleaser. So, Zach, what do you think of Gran Turismo based on a true story?
So I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I saw the first trailer of this movie, it felt like gave away everything. The final trailer absolutely gives away nearly the whole plot. Like, it is crazy how much it gives away, which is a thing now in movies, but it makes it tough when you know your movie's over 2 hours long and you're like, oh my God, like I gotta go watch this thing that I already know the whole plot for. We watched a lot of trailers on this. It's easy for me to be jaded. I can say confidently this movie is better than it looks, which is good. It's not that surprising, though, with Neill Blomkamp at the helm, right? Like, he's no slouch. Additionally, the talent in the movie is good. Archie Madekwe? I was going to say, like, Madawecki, which I know isn't right, but I don't know. That's what came to mind. He's actually real solid. He's young. He's got a little room to grow, but he brings enough charisma to a role of somebody who's supposed to be kind of a gamer and kind of introverted. He's not good at like publicity, being in front of cameras. So in that way, he feels like he fits as kind of an awkward dude growing into this role. David Harbour's a delight. We last saw him in Violent Night. He's also in Stranger Things. Love him. Orlando Bloom, refreshing to see in kind of this sleazebag marketer role. But unfortunately, I think the movie is also tarnished, kind of like by a thick coat of marketing veneer for PlayStation and Sony products and Gran Turismo, and also
and Nissan,
a ton of Nissan. I didn't know Nissan was going to be making a movie this year, but they did, and it's secretly Gran Turismo. I'm excited to talk about it. Like I said, a pretty decent summer romp. Andy, where do you want to jump in?
So, gosh, there's a lot of places to start. I want to start with our cast, I think, and say this movie is it's kind of paint by number, and it could have been very mediocre and really bad, but I think it does a very predictable thing, but it's done very well. David Harbour, I feel like, really carries this. He plays this, he's like the racing coach that's got to turn all these gamers into racers, and he's not nice. He's basically like, none of you can do this. You all suck. It takes like elite athleticism to drive a car for 3 hours and not, have your body fail. He's like, I've done it. You won't do it. But he has this kind of weird charisma. Like, even though he's mean and doesn't believe in anyone, he's still so charismatic on the screen. He's so good and very convincing in his role. Orlando Bloom is the kind of sleazy. He's got the marketing angle. Everything's, he's like he doesn't want to go with Jan Mardenborough initially because he's like, he's kind of weak in front of the camera. He can't talk, he doesn't have the square jaw like this other guy. And so he does that role well. And then, we have a slew of newcomers. Spice Girl, former Spice Girl Jerry Halliwell plays his mother in this movie, which was a nice,
I didn't put that together.
Touch.
Yeah.
And the great Jaimin Hansu, collecting a check, he's way too good for this movie, but he does a good job as the father. Like I said, it's very paint by number, but it just does what it does really well. And Gran Turismo, if you haven't played, is a racing simulator, so it's not like a very fun game. It's very, very hard because it's actual racing. You have to learn in the game, like you learn a lot about like steering and braking, acceleration, like how to take turns, how to take corners properly. You have to learn about like tire allocation. Like, it's very technical, and like the very first race you do is usually a circle, and it's really hard to win because it's not like Need for Speed or these other things. You really learn a lot about driving and racing and how cars work, and it'll affect your actual driving because that's happened to me from playing it. So it's like this real deal simulator.
Yeah, Andy's absolutely right. I'm glad you actually slipped in the bit about the simulator. I completely forgot. It is based on a game, of course, and a true story, as the title has been changed to. Quick note about Jaimin Hansu before I jump to the plot. He's actually really good in this movie. He's really good. And like he said in interviews in the past that he feels like he's typecast as like, a mythical warrior or some kind of like ancient soldier or something, or like God's servant, like he is in Shazam,
totally.
Right? And like in this, he's just playing like a dad who used to be an athlete who has kind of had his shot in the sun and got injured, and now he works a job, so he wants better for his kids and he's passionate about it. He's great, dude. He's barely in the movie too, and I was like, dude, it's really nice to see him playing something so grounded and playing it so well. He's a great talent. He needs to be in more movies. Regarding the plot, I know we said it's all in the trailer, but I'll give you the overarching here with no spoilers. Of course, we don't do that here. Archie plays Jan, yes, a young gamer who is basically dropped out of college and has no real aspirations, but keeps telling his parents, I want to be a racer. It's what I want to do. And they live in, middle income housing in Britain, and they're like, we can't afford it. You need $1 billion to be a racer, which is true. But he notices one day on his favorite game, Gran Turismo, that he's been entered into a contest because he's got the fastest lap time on one of the tracks in the game. And he quickly discovers that if he wins, he goes to GT Academy, right? Where he'll learn to be a real racer alongside 11 other contestants from around the world. All this is organized by sleazy Orlando Bloom, alongside, of course, David Harbour, our pit engineer, who is very skeptical about the whole thing. Brings that like kind of father figure, but also a bit of sass to it, right? He's sarcastic. And as these gamers try to learn to be drivers and one up each other, Jan quickly rises through the ranks and then has to go on to multiple sets of competitions to become better and better, get your racing license, right? Like become a racer. And I think what's neat about this movie is it doesn't just stop at he won the GT Academy. He won the game. No, there's like another hour of film where he has to go get a license and he's jetting around the world and his parents don't really believe in him, which is a weird write-off because it feels like his family would, but I think that's just adjusted.
They kind of disappear for half the movie.
They kind of vanish. Like at one point he's flying to Vienna, right? Which is something he's never done. And he's talking to his mom on the phone and she's like, well, good luck, dear. Have fun. And it's like, if your kid is getting in a 200-mile-an-hour rocket and flying around the world to race, like a deadly activity, you would be going to those games. Like, it's surprising to me that she's not attending races, but like, I don't know. They don't seem to be that into it. Anyway, like, I think the movie feels full. And if I was a kid, I would feel like it felt really grand because it's not just qualify for race, do good in school, win race. That's like half the movie. And the other half is a series of increasingly challenging races with increasingly challenging racers. They're going to big tracks, right? They go to the Nürburgring in Germany. You see Le Mans in I guess Vienna. Like you go to all these places where you're seeing big cars, big action. France. I'm not into racing. Big action, big cars. And I think that's the stuff Blomkamp does really well. He shoots machinery great. The races, though, I do want to talk about, feel a little out of sync. And I think I'll talk about that in general direction. But what else you got, Andy?
Yeah, I think the technical part of this movie, I think, is what's done really well. Like they get a lot of the cars. The cars are on tracks. They're racing. Like there's a lot of drone shots, which actually kind of make me a little nauseous.
It's kind of too much. Like, there's a few too many drone shots, admittedly.
But you know, some of it is totally like VFX shots of everything, the track, the cars, for some of the more dangerous stuff. But there is a lot of like hot, fast cars and like camera rigs all over them. That stuff I think is done pretty well, and that's part of the feeling of Gran Turismo is like, you know, driving 150 miles an hour around a track and trying not to throw the car off. It also does get into the very dangerous nature of racing. Racers they die usually every year in a variety of motorsports. There's a great documentary called Senna about Ayrton Senna, who was a Brazilian F1 driver who died tragically, and it was like crushing to the whole nation. It's a very dangerous sport, but it's also wildly popular. But it doesn't shy away from the dangerous aspect.
Yeah, I think Blomkamp I like fills in the gaps in direction where the screenplay is lacking. Like, because for the first act of this movie, it feels a lot like marketing. Like I was watching it thinking this movie feels like it's made by the character that Orlando Bloom is playing. Like this sleazy marketer who's like, how can I sell Sony and Nissan and like, I don't know, like how can I wrap all this up? And it's like he plays the game and then it becomes a thing and you get these sequences where he's playing the game and he gets home and he's got his PlayStation controller and you're like, boy, this is so Sony heavy. In so far that the first minute of the movie is literally an ad for Gran Turismo. It explains what the game is, that it's the most accurate racing simulator in the world, shows you a ton of footage, the guy who made it, them making it, scanning cars in. The credits of the movie are also that. Like, it is bookended by advertising. And in the end of the film, when you've got a bunch of people watching a race, they're in the PlayStation lounge and there's Sony marketing it. Like, it's brutal. The Nissan logo is everywhere. But in the longer parts of the movie, you forget that that's what you're watching because Blomkamp steps on the sincerity. Like, he really leans into David Harbour kind of bringing this kid up and being like, hey, I really believe in you. You know, like you're not nothing. I might be sarcastic, but like you have genuine talent here. And Jan coming to find that in himself, and his dad finally coming around, and Orlando Bloom being like, but what about the views? What about the numbers? Right? Like that's like all that stuff I think ends up working real good. Yeah. The only other thing I want to say about the sequences in regards to the actual races, the actual race scenes, to me, maybe you'll connect with me here, Andy. Like they lack a certain like geography. It's hard to keep up with what's going on in the races, and they fix this by doing a lot of freeze frames with hover cards, like just text over the top of the screen where they explain what's going on, or they'll put in like a little arrow that points at a car, and they're like, this one's in place 3, this one's in place 4, and then it'll cut to another shot, and it'll be like, now he's in place 2, and it's like, hold on, like that's not very good like geography of a scene, right? Like you want to feel like you're in the cockpit racing with the racers, making the turns, and you don't really get that much. You get a whole lot of drone shots, VFX. It's still fun, but it's just odd. Like it's an odd way to put a race scene together. Usually you want to have pretty clear motives for every car you're dealing with, but it ends up coming off real chaotic. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, the scenes aren't quite as exciting as good as they were done in Ford v Ferrari. I think that those racing scenes are probably the best of recent race movies. They're good in this. They're not near as good. Like you said, I don't know where I am. I don't have the feel of the car being inside of it as much as I do in that movie. That's what I was kind of hoping for more of, that kind of thing where the car is shaking, you're taking turns at 100 miles an hour, and what that feels like, what that looks like. It doesn't get into the weeds enough, and that's kind of what I wanted more from this. I wanted David Harbour's character to talk about, like, to really show his knowledge about racing and cars, and it just doesn't get into the weeds as much as and this is what I want from every sports movie. Like when we watched King Tennis, what's his name with Will Smith? King Richard.
King Richard.
Yeah. Same thing. Like they're just like, oh, the kids are your daughters are so good, but then they never like get into why or the how or like
right.
I wanted them to get into the weeds. Like I feel like it brings you in more. They probably think they're going to lose audiences, but I think it will feel more authentic that way.
Yeah, like don't shy away from just being like, oh, the brakes can't take it. Like, tell me why on a slope you have to take this race line instead of that race line, or why when it's raining, like you need to drive so much specifically different. At one point, Jan switches to a completely different model of car, more of like an F1 oriented, kind of like sit in the center thing with bigger, wider wheels. And David Harbour's like, it's gonna take a few weeks to learn how to drive on this before you go to the big race. And I'm like, it would take a year for a driver to switch over to that format. And like it's a little juiced up for sure, but I do think it makes for a pretty good popcorn kind of movie. Like I on the one hand, yeah, it's got flaws, but on the other hand, like seeing with the crowd was a really good time. I had this big fat guy sitting next to me, and like there's this one like car crash sequence in the movie where all the sound gets sucked out of it and you can hear a pin drop, and this guy goes, huh? That's physics, like right in the silence, and the car like explodes onto the ground. It's a whole thing. Like everybody laughed. Like it's just it ends up being a really solid summer flick, and I think that's what Neill Blomkamp was trying to make. Like mission accomplished. He's not going to win Oscars with this thing, but like it's a pretty solid, fun flick, and I think that's a really big victory coming out of a trailer that gives the whole damn movie away.
Yeah, it's a fun summer romp. It's for the crowd that just goes maybe once or twice during the summer, or once or twice a month, looking just for what's out that we haven't seen. It, like I said, I saw it with a big crowd. Like I said, they were clapping, cheering, tears, the whole, like it was working the crowd, and it was working on it. And even though it is a little bit paint by number, it was an enjoyable time. It's a little bit too long. There's this weird romance subplot that they could completely cut.
Yeah.
Zach probably just completely forgot about.
Yeah. I did.
They try
it's weird.
Yeah, there's some things that they could cut for length, and just put it at 2 hours, and it would be good. It'd be fine.
Yeah, I think it's a fine movie. Also, music by Lorne Balfe, who I don't know if he does a lot of cinema soundtracks, but I know he does most of the music for Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed franchise. So if you like that music, which is solid, he does the music for this. I don't know why that jumped out to me. I just saw him in the credits and was like, oh, wild. But any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
That's like there's a kind of antagonistic figure who races for Team Kappa, and he might as well call him like Driver McBadboy, because that's exactly what he is. He's like this very like stereotypical like rich wealthy kid who's no one can teach me anything, and like he's the one that drives the gold Lamborghini you see in the trailer, and he's kind of this forced antagonistic figure that you kind of roll your eyes at, but he's got the gold Lambo, which looks cool.
He also had my favorite line in the whole movie. There's a bunch of characters who will say goofy offhand video game oriented comments as like slander to Jan while he's driving, like, wow, you took that corner really fast, what'd you use, a cheat code, or you're a noob, like just ridiculous stuff. And our bad boy driver, he's got this great line in there. He says, I'm gonna nerf you, gamer. Like, it's so stupid. Like, a mirthless chuckle. That was me in the theater.
That's like
a mirthless chuckle.
Like at a Scott Pilgrim or something.
I know. Like, it's so bad. And like that those are the moments where the marketing like stings, you know? You're just like, God, please go out and buy our game. Go buy play Gran Turismo today. Like, that stuff hurts. But like overall, I think the good outshines the bad, for me at least, and ends up being a pretty good time. So, Andy, would you recommend Gran Turismo?
Yeah, I would. It's a crowd-pleasing film. It's made really well. The racing stuff is very thrilling, very accurate in a lot of ways. It is an inspiring story to take someone who just played a game that they were able to put him on a track that he was able to win and able to race and podium at the Le Mans famous 24-hour grueling race. A team of simulated racers won that. So it is an incredible story. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Solid, turn your brain off and beat the heat for 2.5 hour kind of movie. Like, if you're going in thinking this is going to be some complex feature, watch the trailer. It isn't. But if you're just going in to have fun, right? Date night, whatever, need something to take your kids to, Gran Turismo is great. Yeah, on the other side of me, that reminds me, there was a dad hanging out with his son, and they were just chatting the whole movie. Dad, what's that race? Dad, why does this do this? And he was all into it, and I was like, that's a sweet moment. Like, God, you're not going to get that in any
total
other movie
dad
in
movie.
Theaters right now. Yeah,
total
right.
dad
movie. Yeah. Gran Turismo, not too shabby. I don't know what streamer it'll be coming to. I couldn't tell you who put it out, but we'll figure it out. Probably on like Paramount Plus or something. Feels like a Paramount joint. I don't know. Anyway, we need to talk about a couple of trailers, some things coming out. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park.
I'm going to be taking the first one this week. The movie is The Killer. So The Killer is David Fincher's new project. Ooh, we last saw him with Mank in 2020. Before that, he was making Mindhunter on Netflix, seasons 1 through 3 from 2017 to 2019. He put out Gone Girl in 2014, I think, which is like a ways away. Hard to believe it was that far back. So he has not done a whole lot of features, but I don't think he's lost a step. The Killer features Michael Fassbender as a ruthless assassin who, according to IMDb's summary, is on the run after a near miss and has to evade and even anticipate and overcome rivals, people in his own organization, as he travels the world trying not to be caught, I guess. That's what I know. The trailer's particularly vague. It's a whole lot of imagery, but Fassbender looks awesome in it. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can see at least, like, I can click through this because I don't want to get copyrighted, so you can see screen grabs. Andy, what do you think of this trailer?
I think this is cool. It is a little generic, but if it didn't have Fincher's name attached to it, if it was like the Russo brothers, I wouldn't think much of it, because it just, we don't know much about the story other than he's an assassin. It does look really sharp, and it looks very kind of authentic. I'm going to be interested to see what kind of story Fincher's trying to tell. What are the themes, the underlying kind of motifs that the movie's going to be about, because there's definitely going to be like an Oscar kind of contender. Fassbender's always a delight. So this looks generic, but I know that Fincher's behind it, so I know it's going to be more than what it seems.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to. I'll admit the trailer looks a little flat, but I'm hoping that the talent behind it is going to give us something really special.
moving on to our next trailer. This just came out. The Book of Clarence, which stars the great Lakeith Stanfield as a wannabe prophet in the time of Jesus of Nazareth, AD 33. We see him witness Jesus rise to fame and popularity, and he says, "I want that. I want to be a leader. I want to be a Messiah, leader of men." So it's kind of like a historical comedy that explores faith and some other things. It looks really funny, and it's directed by
James Samuel.
James Samuel, who previously did The Harder They Fall, which was a Western, which we reviewed on this show that came out on Netflix, still available on Netflix, which Lakeith Stanfield was also in. So this looks like a lot of fun, a little bit of Book of Mormon kind of vibe to it. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, James Samuel called his shot on this one. I was doing a little research before we hopped on here, and his previous film, The Harder They Fall, which we covered on episode 159 of Off Script, actually has a mention of the Book of Clarence by Lakeith Stanfield's character in the movie, and somebody tells him the Book of Clarence isn't a real book. James Samuel knows what he's doing. He had this kind of idea together. He knew this was going to be his next project. He was excited to get a bunch of the cast from that movie in it. Yeah, a little Life of Brian, right? Little Year One, like this kind of alternate historical look. But he said, he told Vanity Fair, who saw an early screening of the film, that it is, he wanted to make a movie about like the guy that sells Jesus' sandals, you know, or somebody who works at like like an old hair salon in Jerusalem. Like, who is that person? Like, who is part of the world, but like isn't necessarily bought into like the dream. And Lakeith Stanfield looks great. The early reports are he's tremendous in it. Looks funny. Like, I don't know, man. Book of Clarence might be something to keep an eye out for. Sounds goofy. But I think we'll see more about it like in the coming weeks. So you heard it here first. With that, we should jump into our final film of the episode. Short trailer park this week, but that's the way it goes. The movie is How to Blow Up a Pipeline. So How to Blow Up a Pipeline is a 2022 indie film about extreme environmental activism. Andy and I covered the trailer a while back on the show. It's a smaller one, but we were like, this looks like something interesting. It's a movie that's covered in film grain and like full of actors who you haven't seen in anything. It's written by one of the stars who wrote it with the director and another writer. And it's functionally kind of a heist movie. It's about a group of extreme environmental activists who are willing to damage property in order to accomplish their means of trying to slow or halt or at least bring awareness to climate change. The movie opens with one of our characters stabbing the tires out of like a Ford F-150 and then leaving a sign on the window that says like, here's the reason I destroyed your stuff, because this is bad for everybody and we shouldn't have it, and sorry, but you know, them's the rules. This accelerates when one of these activists decides, hey, we should do something big. We should make a statement. We should blow up an oil pipeline in Texas. So they find a house, coordinate with some friends, figure out how to communicate without using phones or anything trackable, and then they all meet over a weekend to build 2 bombs and blow up 2 sections of pipelines to send a message to the world without harming anybody, specifically that, you know, oil is bad and we're ruining the environment. But along the way, they start to realize, you know what, maybe this does actually have victims. Like, maybe this isn't just going to hurt big oil. Maybe it's going to hurt people at the gas pump. Maybe it's going to hurt families. In fact, who knows what this could do? It might even hurt us if these things go off, because we're building a bomb in the desert from details we found on YouTube. Like, it's gritty. It's hard-boiled. How to Blow Up a Pipeline is a really surprising feature. It's available on Hulu right now. I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, what'd you think?
I really enjoyed a lot of this film. I feel like it doesn't know how to end, how to kind of stick the landing. It's based on a book, which is it's not a novel. It's a polemic that basically argues that kind of passive means of environmentalism are too slow and ineffective, and so because big companies are essentially destroying the environment, then it's justified to use direct action, like destroying infrastructure to fight back. So that's kind of the thought experiment. that this is based on, and then this whole novel, this whole story is built around that. I feel like the movie's really thrilling because, like you said, it's a group of people working together to build explosives, multiple explosives to damage pipeline infrastructure, and it's a whole lot of DIY bomb making, which can go wrong at any moment. So it's very thrilling, and they're on the verge of getting caught a lot of times. There's flashbacks to all the characters' stories. I feel like it needs another act. Like, it doesn't know how to finish. Like, what happens when you apply this philosophy in the real world? Because it's one thing to say, like, yes, we should fight back stronger to make change happen. It's another thing to do it and see what the real world ramifications would be. So there's a lot that works about this, some that doesn't.
A quick run through of our cast, because many of them are small times or unknowns you may not have heard of yet. I think everybody is solid in it, and I've got a couple honorable mentions in here. Ariella Ibarra is Sochi, kind of our lead organizer, lead activist who kind of puts this crew together. She's also the writer on the film. She's the head writer, helped put it together, help kind of adapt it from this this book. Additionally, we have Kristen Frozeth as Rowan, Lucas Gage as Logan, who we've seen in a few features. I can't think of any directly right now.
White Lotus.
White Lotus on HBO. Yeah, Forrest Goodluck is Michael, who's probably our most exceptional performance. He's this very understated young Native American man who is very fed up with the way oil has basically turned his family into a bunch of like bead makers. Like they're just not doing anything exciting. So he is kind of our bomb maker. We previously saw him as Leonardo DiCaprio's son in The Revenant. It's a really small role, but like I don't know why he jumped out at me, and I looked him up and was like, that's where he came from. Sasha Lane as Theo, Jamie Lawson as Alicia, Marcus Scribner, Sean, Jake Weary as Dwayne. That's, I think, our leads. There may be a couple others, but that's pretty much who we've got. Irina Bedard is Joanna. I'm sorry, that's the other one. All of these people come from different walks of life. Most are liberal, save for Jake Weary as Dwayne, who is super not liberal, but it's his land in Texas, and he is over it. So like Forrest Goodluck's Michael, the bomb maker, he feels like he's got something in common with him. Many of our characters are paired with somebody else, like they come from the same place, so they have a similar origin story. And the film is split up by this kind of couple of days where they're building the bombs and trying to get them out to the pipeline, and flashback sequences in between that act as chapters with title cards that give us just a brief, like 8 minutes, like maybe 10 minutes into who these people are before you're right back out to the weekend with harrowing music and a pulse pounding soundtrack. And a pace that feels like we are building to something of an explosion, which I think is a very smart structure.
Yeah, I was going to say keen-eyed viewers will recognize Jake Weary from It Follows. He's the boyfriend character that we meet in the kind of opening scene. This is a good cast, but the cast is a little bit too big, and like I said, there's a lot of flashbacks to all the characters' backstories and basically how they've all been negatively affected by climate change, in one sense or another. Either directly, some of the characters are sick, have been made sick by living close to refineries. Jake Weir's character Dwayne, who's the Texas boy, his land has been seized via eminent domain, and he's looking to fight back. So they all have all these different backstories, but there's like 10 of them, and it's kind of a lot, and I start to lose track. And the problem with the big cast is screen time gets cut down, so we don't really spend a lot of time with everyone.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, and I think the movie does a fine job of giving you just enough of everyone to not lean in any one direction too strongly. You do have a couple characters who are more prominent than others, but for the most part, everybody gets equal screen time. I think if you're going to have a cast this big, it's probably smart to keep them a little simpler, right? You're not getting too in the weeds with any one person. I love the look of this movie. It is shot with a lot of film grain, and the color's really washed out, and it comes off looking like a 70s snuff movie or something, right? Like it looks intentionally low budget. Like it comes off looking almost, it reminded me a lot of like old Texas Chainsaw Massacre, honestly, with kind of like the golden sunlight coming out over Odessa. Like it makes it feel like something that's older. It makes it feel like something that's retroactive, even though it's a story that is very, very contemporary. And I think that's because of where the book comes from, right? Like it harkens back to this feeling like this has been a problem for a long time. This has been a thing forever. And like, I think that gives gravitas to the statement the film is kind of making, which is, like the book, that, destructive activism is maybe necessary. Wild idea. And it's actually seen this movie get in some hot water. I know there were some theater chains that were like, hey, we don't love this. There were some distributors who didn't like it. I know there were a couple film festivals that were like, we don't know if we're running How to Blow Up a Pipeline because it's just so incendiary. Honestly, covering it on the show here, I'm not even sure how this is going to go up on YouTube because I'll upload this review like we always do, but I don't know what kind of views it's going to get with a title like How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Like that automatically like draws attention in a negative way. And the film doesn't necessarily shy away from that message. Like, interestingly, I think its thesis statement is that, yes, like the book says, it is kind of necessary. And that's bananas to say that there's a movie like that, but that's part of what makes it feel so exciting, right? Vice called it a ticking time bomb. And like in that way, I think what an appropriate title, what an appropriate subject.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fascinating things is that it takes the premise of like, yes, we should fight back against the big oil companies, corporations, and shows us a group of people walking through and doing it. And I think the problem is that the film just kind of ends there, and I feel like we need another act of, okay, what happens in the real world when you take this kind of direct action? What's the legal fallout? What's the social fallout? What does it how does it affect other people? Does it inspire other people? Does it hurt people you didn't intend to? What is the realistic effect to it? And these are great questions that I feel like the film ends too soon, and it gets bogged down in the second act with, I think, too many backstories, and you could have cut some of that to give us a little bit more in the third act of like, well, what's the result of this ideology in practice?
Yeah, like overall, I think How to Blow Up a Pipeline is. Well, I guess I should save my overall thoughts for recommendations, but like I think I was really charmed by how tenuous some of the action sequences in this film feel, because like I said, whenever you're in the modern day, or whenever you're in the sequences of a couple days and they're building the bombs and planning on putting them out there, like there's just this constant feeling of pressure. Because not only are your characters afraid of getting caught, but like there's this, you don't want to blow themselves up, and they're hoping that like their message will be due, right? Like obviously they're doing this for a reason. It's a scary thing. What if they get arrested? What if they get caught? What if one of them, gets injured mortally even? Like what do they do? Like what is the plan? At one point, one character points out like we can't even go to a hospital because we all have excuses for where we're at right now to make this possible. It's surprisingly well planned, but also very clumsy. It's like kind of like walking into a heist movie halfway through it. Almost like Reservoir Dogs, although that's technically the end of the heist, right? Like you miss the actual bit. And I think How to Blow Up a Pipeline, like for its small beginnings and for its simple budget, like really shoots the stars. And I'm surprised at how well it comes over, I think, for me. Any other thoughts, Andy, for recommendations?
I love the score. It has this very like 70s, 80s synth score that just keeps it going. The first act, I think, really moves. Like it's edited so tightly before it kind of gets too long in the second act. But the score is moving. It's got this synth thing. It reminded me of like Blade Runner. I'm gonna be adding it to my very long Spotify playlist of film scores, which I haven't added to since Across the Spider-Verse. So I'm be anxious to add a new score to it. Love the score to this.
Keep in mind, it's a very curated list. Oppenheimer may win best score this year, and Andy hasn't even bothered to get it on the score list. Like it's
winning for like 3 good tracks.
They're amazing. They're the best tracks of the year. No, we'll see. We don't even know if it'll win yet. But
sing the theme. Sing the theme to Oppenheimer.
Hum the Oppenheimer theme. Andy, would you recommend How to Blow Up a Pipeline?
Yeah, I would. I would say I would have loved to have caught this in the theater. We watched it on Hulu, but it's a very interesting film. Like I said, it's more like a thriller with these people trying to do something very illegal, very dangerous, and you're not real sure if they're going to get away with it or not. There's political elements, police elements. Gets a little bit bogged down in the second act with a big cast and a lot of backstories, but overall, really enjoyed it. Thrilling. It's on Hulu. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's a Hulu watch, not very long. Like has really good pacing. Totally a good time if you need to do laundry on Sunday or something, or just want something to throw on, or maybe you want to sit down and watch something like a little offbeat but pretty interesting. Like give How to Blow Up a Pipeline a shot and tell your friends because like it is not that bad of a feature. I think it's really interesting. I'm excited to see what these kids come up with next. And that's that's our show for a week. Andy, this is our fastest episode we've done in a minute. Oh my gosh. I don't know how this happened to me.
What's the timestamp? I can't see it.
We're at like 49 minutes. Yeah, normally we add another 10 on here, but I think that's going to be it. I've been coming around on these ideas of like bonus reviews because I think, every little bit helps. And I had an idea for one this week. I was going to talk about the Coraline 4K, but I don't have anything queued up for it, so I'll just say it's good. And Coraline's a solid Leica movie. Andy, did you watch anything this week?
I started The Godfather yesterday because I realized it's on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
Thank you for the login.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched The Godfather in years, so I was just kind of getting back to some cinema roots while I crush people in chess.
Did I give you my Paramount login?
You did, because we watched something. Well, you came over, we watched something.
No, we watched that in my place.
You gave it to me at some point. Otherwise, how do I have it?
I have no idea. I was gonna say, did you sign up for a free trial and didn't know it? Like, I don't know. So. I guess you probably logged in with my credentials. All right. We'll get that password changed, folks.
We had a deal.
We did not have a deal. Anyway, yes. Anyway, that's that's the show for the week. Andy, what are we doing next week?
We are on break next week. Taking a couple of weeks off. Some movies you might be interested. Next week, the Threequalizer, Equalizer 3, the revenge film starring Denzel Washington comes out. We will not be watching that, but if you're interested in, that's going to be the big release next week, as well as what we will be checking out, Bottoms, which is the queer fight club high school movie starring Rachel Sennett and Ayo Idibiri from The Bear and from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. We're going to be checking that out. And then something new on, we'll see what comes out on streaming in September, and we'll be back on September 12th.
If you enjoyed the show today, the first thing I'd say is thanks for listening. We appreciate it. And the second thing I'd say is go check us out, right? Go see where you can see the show. If you're watching on YouTube, go check out our other reviews. Lots of good things going on over here. So slide around, see how you feel. Maybe subscribe to the channel. If you see us on Facebook, you can follow us over there. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter, all the usual social media stuff. And of course, the audio version of the podcast is available on iTunes and Google Play and Spotify and iHeartMedia. You may have been listening to it there right now. And if you are, I'd say you should totally subscribe. Subscribe to get new episodes of Off Script delivered straight to your phone every single Tuesday, except next week, which we are taking off. Rate and review if you can swing. Leave a comment for you boys. A little bit of correspondence never hurts. We might even read it on the show. So if you liked our reviews, if you like what we're doing here, please give us a follow. We really appreciate it. It helps us more than you know. And from all of us. Oh, wait. Hold on. I forgot where you can leave correspondence. If you want to leave us a direct note, you can email us at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. Come straight to Dr. Draper and myself. And of course, you can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, for interviews, reviews, media, other things we're doing. Lots of exciting things going on. Big things for Offscript. Big things coming. And it's episode 225. Hard to believe we're already here. From all of us at Offscript, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.